After the failure of the November 1830 uprising, thousands of Poles left the country to live a life in exile. They represented the cultural elite, the artistic elite, the literary elite. What was the effect on Poland, on ideas, on culture, of having the major cultural and political influences be forged outside the lands of Poland? In this episode of Poland Daily History, we look at these issues in greater detail and assess the effect of this great emigration. Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. Today I'm in the studio with Dominik Szczęsny Kostanecki, a historian and a PhD scholar, and we're going to discuss the Great Emigration. Dominik, thank you for joining us. In terms of the fact that these figures were sort of living essentially in exile, I mean, do you think that obviously would have influenced what they composed, what they wrote, what they painted? But do you think, which happens whenever you live outside your home country after a while, that there was sort of increased romanticism because they were sort of imagining perhaps a Poland which in their mind existed, but perhaps was slightly exaggerated, never quite existed? I mean, do you think that happened in their art at all?
Yeah. I can say it from my perspective, because I spent some time abroad. That when you that your mind has this temptation to magnify things. So it's psychologically speaking, it's absolutely comprehensible. That the Lithuanian countryside was never so tranquil and so then it was in Mickiewicz's Pantadeusz.
So, yes, but I suppose that's inevitable. I mean, I probably carry around a romanticised view of England, having lived here for a number of years. I suppose that's quite inevitable. These people who are actually far more creative than I am, poets and writers and painters.
If you look at the Polish intellectual life in Poland, I mean, under the three partitions of the 40s, I mean, it's there is no excellence. I mean, perhaps I'm a bit too unjust with. I mean, there are no two names, let's say, poets. No, you can name Lenartowicz and Cyril Komla, but then again, I mean, it's not that league. I mean, it's not that a class. I mean, so when you compare the intellectual life of Poles in Paris and that in Poland, there's two different worlds.
So sort of Paris got the best deal in terms of, but and also looking in the reverse. I mean, what sort of effect did this sort of have on Poles back in Poland? The fact that all the great art, if you like, music, literature, was being created outside Poland, particularly in Paris. I mean, was that seen as a good thing because at least it meant it was happening in conditions of greater intellectual freedom than might have existed in Poland, or am I reading too much into it?
No, I would say because the thing is that fortunately, culture is not fixed to one place. So when it got created in Paris, it's not that it had to stay there. I mean, it could come back. This wave could take the opposite direction. So when you've got Pantadeusz published in Paris in 1834, I mean, a number of copies and then reprints later on were coming back to Poland. So it's not that the Polish culture settled down in Paris and it had to move. It's not like Pilgrim Fathers who went to America and abandoned,
they say it became locked in the 18th century.
Exactly.
Yes. And in terms of that's on the cultural artistic level, but if we look back at consider again this gathering at the Hotel Lambert, in terms of what were the hopes for direct political action in Poland? I mean, were they trying to encourage people to start wars or invade Poland?
No. Hotel Lambert was on the far side. I mean, they would say that the best way to regain independence is to win the best diplomatic constellation in Europe. So that's why for Czartoryski, the most important aspect of his political actions is diplomacy. And it's done so well that he's got, of course, we are talking informal, but
yes.
he's got his, let's say, ambassadors in the Vatican,
right?
So by the Pope, in Turkey, so Czartoryski would say that only diplomatic actions can restore Poland, because Poland itself, within its maximum power, she can produce, not here, upon the Vistula, is too little to overthrow free...
And how receptive were folk in other countries to the Polish, if you were, diplomatic message? I mean, at what level was Czartoryski able to operate? I mean, who was he able to? We mentioned the Vatican, obviously, as a Catholic country, going to see the Pope was probably relatively straightforward. But I mean, in terms of Istanbul, in terms of London, was he taken, or were his diplomatic efforts taken seriously by the government?
Now, let's talk about examples. I mean, of course, the success was limited, but when we look at the Vatican and his diplomacy, in Rome, just after the fall of the Rising, the Pope write an encyclical letter, no, a bull, sorry. It's not
No, of course, yes.
With horns, but an official document. And in that document, he would condemn, that's strange, he would condemn Polish fighters, although they were Catholics, because for the Pope, what was more important was not that the Polish people was Catholic, but, to maintain the Ancien Régime
because I think
Europe.
it's worth pointing out at that point, Italy was not actually unified, and the Pope was, apart from his religious duties, was of course quite a significant temporal ruler within central Italy. So of course
he wouldn't welcome any
he
revolution.
Wouldn't welcome any revolution at all.